Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all participants of IMU. Allow me to share my screen. I cannot seem to share my screen. Can we have the host to unshare the screen? Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here today, and thank you for your kind introduction. So this session today is about best practices on using web conferencing tools for online teaching and learning. So you can get these slides and you can share this. You can share these slides later. I think I will give up the link to the slides later on. So I will be discussing about the different web conferencing tools, which is which, and what are the common ones, I would say, and how can you choose the best web conferencing tools for your teaching and learning, what would be the factors. And I usually plan, we usually need to plan before we have our web conferencing live lecture. So I will try to elaborate on what kind of planning that we have to do before we use web conferencing tools for teaching and learning. At the beginning of the live lecture, what we should do, and at the end of live lecture. So I mostly focus on examples using WebEx for as a web conferencing tools for teaching and learning, because I have a subscribed account on WebEx. But the features, most of the features is also available in, for example, in Zoom, and maybe not in Google Meet, but some of them is also available in Microsoft Teams. So I'm not sure what kind of web conferencing tools you are using, but basically, the basic features are all available in all of these web conferencing tools. So let us start with this one. So it looks like this teacher is everything under control. And when we talk about teaching online, as savvy as you are, things can go wrong. If you're telling me today that you have been using web conferencing tools for so many years, however, when it comes to teaching and learning, it can go wrong. So as simple as, for example, if you're using Google Meet, and you are attending as a participant in Google Meet, and you need to share your screen. However, in certain devices, such as if you're using MacBook, they require you to open your system preferences, adjust your settings to allow your computer to ask for your permission to allow your computer to share screen. So there are certain, sometimes there are security issues. So there are so many things, unless you test things out and you plan things out, things can go wrong, as savvy as you are. Now, so it is always good to plan, and there are many other web conferencing tools available in the market, but I believe these are the common ones. We have Google Meet, we have Cisco WebEx, we have Zoom, as well as we have Microsoft Teams. When we are talking about the pandemic, before we talk about the minimum bandwidth requirement, we talk about the data consumption, and we talk about personal accounts limitation. And we also have to bear in mind what are the purpose of using web conferencing tools? Is it you're doing that for synchronous online learning, or are you using web conferencing tools to deliver your online lecture, or you use your web conferencing tools to carry out asynchronous online learning? So this can also be done in, for example, if you use WebEx Space, or if you use Microsoft Teams. So these two web conferencing tools allows you to have asynchronous online learning. So these are some of the factors that you need to consider when you want to choose what kind of web conferencing tools that you want to use for your teaching and learning, and what would be your purpose. Now, if you're using because there are so many updates recently that maybe I'm not aware of. But I think the last time I checked, which is in 2021, the most tools that requires that will consume a lot of students' data would be Microsoft Teams, because this Microsoft Teams is more or less like a mini learning management system. And the second highest data consumption tool would be also Google Meet, and then we have WebEx, and then we have Zoom. However, I'm not sure how and what would be the ranking of the data consumption among these 4 web conferencing tools. And I believe it is more or less the same. But if you want to consider this factor, if internet connection or the bandwidth is an issue for your students, and then you might need to take into consideration these kind of factors when you want to choose your tools. And of course, you have to think also what kind of tools that you have, the personal accounts limitation. For example, Google Meet, if you are no longer a subscriber, you cannot record your meeting in Google Meet. And for Cisco WebEx, for example, if you want to have additional tools, or if you want to use additional add-ons, you need to have another accounts and things like that. So try to also consider what are the limitations of the accounts that you have, the subscription that you have with the web conferencing tool. Now, I will talk about this later, I think. Okay. Now, before we use web conferencing tools for live lecture, I would say that this is the general setting for all. For example, in Zoom, you can set your meeting appearance. In WebEx, you can also set your meeting appearance, and same goes to Microsoft Teams as well as Google Meet. Now, so before you start your lecture, if you want to have your live lecture, let's say you want to have your live lecture, make sure you set your meeting appearance. Similar to what our pengurusi majlis was telling just now, our MC was telling just now, I think we have my poster, I think, before we start. And then there is the good practices of what kind of settings, what kind of appearance that you should choose as a participant. And for myself, what kind of appearance should I choose as a presenter of the session in a web conferencing session. So make sure this is also set before you start your web conferencing session. And then make sure of your recording setting. For example, in WebEx, they will ask you if you want to save your recording session in cloud, or is it in your computer. So if you want to store that in cloud, you have to retrieve later on web on their website. If you want to store your recording in your computer, and then you have to know that if you store a lot of videos in your computer, it will take up your computer memory storage. So you might do not want to consider that. But if you only have a certain number of videos in your computer, and then you might want to have that saved in your computer. So these are some of the recording settings that you have to make sure. And we also have audio settings. I would not say video settings is very important. It's just that the meeting appearance you can consider, but more importantly is to consider the audio settings of your web conferencing tools when you want to teach. So ideally, or in default, in WebEx, they have this, in the recent version, they have these 4 options, which is noise removal, in which they will remove the background sound, and then but your voice will, stay the same. However, if you choose optimize for my voice, not only they remove the background voice, they also optimize your voice. Okay, and if you choose optimize for all voices, what they do is that they remove the background sound, but they optimize the sound nearby. For example, I have 2 persons in front of this computer. They will optimize these 2 persons' voices. So music mode is, I think, ideal if you want to play instrument in front of computer, and then you can choose music mode. So this is more or less the same in Zoom. So the one on the left is a setting for audio settings in Zoom. So you might, you might want to choose high, for example, in Zoom. So in default, they pick auto, but I'm not really sure what auto means. But if you want to optimize your voice, I believe that you have to choose high. So it will suppress the background noise and amplify your voice. So these are some of the audio settings, because some settings maybe it's not in default. Maybe, for example, in WebEx, the default setting is noise removal only, but maybe you want to choose to optimize for my voice for your audio settings before your class starts. And after you have set that, figure out what kind of setting do you want to have. And then you can send invitation to students. So in most web conferencing tools, they usually have 2 modes. You can directly start your meeting, or you can schedule your meeting. So I would advise you to schedule your meeting rather than starting your meeting right away. Because if you schedule your meeting, you can send invitation, and then students will get longer links for that. But for example, in WebEx, I think previously, if you did not schedule your meeting, the breakout session will not be there. But if you schedule your meeting, then only the breakout session, the breakout rooms will be there. So, so make sure if you want to start your class, make sure you pick a scheduled meeting rather than start meeting right away. So of course, all of us, we usually have a link for our personal account that we can distribute right away to our students with our names at the end of the URL. But I would advise all of us to try to use schedule meeting rather than distribute our personal link to the meeting in start meeting. And if you like, you can send out a welcome message. So this feature is available in WebEx. In Zoom, you can start sharing file in Zoom so that your students have a copy of your presentation before your session starts. So this is an example of this is the personal URL I was telling you just now. If in WebEx, try not to distribute this link to your student. Rather, you schedule a meeting rather than using this personal link. If you really have to have an ad hoc meeting, then you can choose this URL, personal URL, to start the meeting. But if you want to have a teaching and learning session, use the schedule meeting. For what reason? For the reason that I told you just now, some of the tools, if you schedule a meeting, then only you have the breakout session tool available. If you start a meeting, sometimes the breakout session is not available if you click right away start a meeting. And then I would do my planning. So this would be my examples of planning before I start my class. So I usually spend not more than 1 hour for a live session with my students, and I combine that with students participating in activities using the existing tools in that web conferencing tools. So for example, in Zoom, we have so many functions, like we have the breakout rooms, we have now we have the whiteboard tools available. I think previously Zoom do not have whiteboard features available. So we can have the share screen features, you have the chat features, and then there are so many features available in this specific web conferencing tools, so make full use of it. So usually what I would do is that I start my class with sharing my files, and if it is my first class, I will share with my students the ground rules of learning in my class. For example, you should mute your mic while somebody else is talking or something like that. If you have ground rules, spend about 2 minutes to explain about that. And then you can start your sharing your screen, and then you can start your first part of your lecture. And then I usually do a short activity. So for example, in WebEx, they have poll. In Zoom, you can have your add-ons in your Zoom. So I will share later on what kind of examples of add-ons that you can have in Zoom. So in WebEx, they have poll. So we can use poll as a short activity for 2 minutes. And then I continue that with second part of lecture. That will be another 5 minutes. And believe me, there are so many things that you can talk about in 5 minutes. So do not worry much about the, I only have 5 minutes to talk. But believe me, there are so many things that you can talk about in 5 minutes. And then I always give out breakouts. I have another activity with my students. For example, I give them problems to discuss. I give them online tasks that I can monitor. So I make full use of whiteboard or the breakout sessions or the breakout rooms. And then I look at the chats. And if it is necessary, I can also transfer the host so my students can take charge in leading their group members. So this can occur, for example, maybe 15 minutes, and then I have another 3 minutes to discuss answers, to give them take-home exercises and to conclude the lesson. And I always, sometimes if I have 2 credits of class, that another 1 hour is for asynchronous session. So I spend 32 minutes for a live lecture, and the rest of the minutes is for my students to do asynchronous activities monitored by me. So they can always interact with me, and I will be monitoring their e-learning activities asynchronously. So, but my live lecture won't last like more than 1 hour. I don't usually do that. Okay, and then so when I have that plan, then I start my class at the beginning of the session. Just now is before the session start. So at the beginning of the session, I make sure that I put the setting about the participants entering the meeting. I make sure that it is mute on entry, because sometimes my students are late to my class. So I make sure the sound of their entering the room does not distract any other students. And if you're a fan of keeping late students out of class, you can always log your meeting so that your students who are late, you can penalize them. But you can always see who is waiting to enter your class, and then you can always unlock them. So if it is my first class, as I said just now, before my teaching and learning session start, I always explain the etiquettes, the class etiquettes, or in online, I think we call it as netiquette. Netiquette is how you behave online. So it's like you do not write things that, racism, something like that. So I explain the ground rules on etiquettes to my students, and explains what they need to do if they want to participate, and how they should respect their other friends when they are talking, and things like that. Then I make sure I record the session. And I usually use that I save on cloud when I record the session. So these are the things that at least you can try to check before you start your session. Then you have your teaching and learning going on. So again, participants, you can make sure you mute them all when you are talking. Tell your students that you have to make sure that you are aware of students raising hands to ask questions. So while you are teaching, please be aware also to students raising hands. Usually in most web conferencing tools, there will be a bleep sound if someone raised their hand. So you can always pay your attention to this kind of sound, and make sure, try to make your teaching and learning session engaging. Try to pause, ask for feedback, and then you continue, and you pause again, you ask for feedback. I read, I think somewhere, that we as teachers, what we normally do is that we ask questions and then we answer our own questions. Why is that? It's because we do not have that kind of patience to wait for our students' answers. Now, when we ask our students question, they maybe need 30 seconds to digest or to understand our question. Once they have understood our question, now they need some time to try to figure out what will be the answer. So that might take maybe another 1 or 2 minutes. But we, as human being as we are, we normally cannot wait up to 2 minutes. Like, for example, we cannot be in silence for maybe, I think, for even 1 minute. So that's the reason why, if we ask our students question, we try to pause and wait for students to answer. Because when we ask things to our students, they need to process this information and they need to think of the answer as well. So try to be patient with our students. So I do this, I think I do this to myself quite a lot of times. So, and I figured that if we thought that when they are in complete silence, they do not know the answer. But we should teach ourselves to be patient with our students and wait for the answers. That will be my own reflection, I would say. I don't know I don't know how that goes with all of you. Sometimes we need to have that kind of passion. At least 1 minute, try to wait. And 1 minute is long enough. Like, for example, you have to count up to 60 for 1 minute to finish, right? So 1 minute is quite a long time that we give. So wait for 1 minute or 2 minutes, and then only you can pinpoint to students that you want to ask your questions to. Okay, and then, as I said, when you are teaching and learning, try to make use of the tools available, the existing tools available in that web conferencing tools, rather than you point them to other links. For example, you point them to, you want to have quizzes, for example, so you point them to other websites. So try to avoid this if you think that the existing web conferencing tools have certain features that allows you to do things inside here, then try to make full use of that tools rather than pointing students out of the web conferencing tools. So make full use of the poll, of the whiteboard, of the sharing screen function, make full use of the chat function, the breakout session, and you have this annotation that you can do with the whiteboard. So try make full use of this, and believe me, if you have maybe 1 hour of teaching and learning, you will not have that a lot of time to cover if you have so many tools to use other than the one existing in the web conferencing tools. So and every time you give out instruction, try to give them time for every instruction that you give out. For example, okay, we have give out this this discussion has to be done within 15 minutes. So try to time yourself and let your students know about your timing as well. Okay. And then so this is an example. So try to annotate, engage with your content by using the tools inside your existing teaching and learning web conferencing tool. Now your teaching and learning session is about to end or has ended. Okay, make sure you tell your students to save all the notes that they make during the session. So students, as a student or as a participant, you can produce, for example, in WebEx, I would say they have a feature called notes. So if they have notes prepared, if they did write some notes using the WebEx tool, make sure they tell them to save all the notes that they made during the session, save all the chats conversation and post if any, share the chats conversation with students, with your students, and then don't forget to stop your recording, and it will take some time to generate the video, and share the video link to students. If your video is too long and you want to break it down, if 32 minutes, I would say that you break it down to, I always break it down to 2 or 3 parts, 10 minutes each, but I think 10 minutes is also long. I would break it down into 6 parts. If 32 minutes, I will break it down into 6 parts. So every part would be 5 minutes. You put a little bit of, introduction to your page when you edit that, and then you can share that through. Now, if you want to share your recorded video to your students, you can share that. For example, in WebEx, they allow you some option. You can download your video in the form of MP4 or in the FLV format. If you want to share your video with your students in the smaller size, you can convert that to .FLV format. There are many video converters out there. So you can download your video in MP4 format and then convert that to FLV format. So FLV format would be a smaller video file that you can share to your students, but the quality would be a little bit less than MP4 format. And if you want to share that through WhatsApp, for example, WhatsApp do not accept .FLV format. They only accept .MP4 format. So if you want to do that, so this is just tips. So break up the recorded video session into chunks and share that to students via WhatsApp if you want. I think Telegram will accept .FLV as well, but WhatsApp didn't accept .FLV format, video format. So this should be done after you have ended your teaching and learning session. Now, should I take question, or is there any question before I move on? Or I can just proceed. Would that be okay? Okay. Okay, so in Microsoft Teams, in WebEx, WebEx and Microsoft WebEx introduced this WebEx Space. So this WebEx Space is the features or the interface is very similar to Microsoft Teams. If you're using Microsoft Teams, you will have this kind of user interface as well. So you have the place where, so you will have the place where you can share files, and then you can talk to your students straight away, and then you can add images, you can tag certain students in the chat, you can have activities. So this can be done in web conferencing tools such as Microsoft Teams. So web conferencing, Microsoft Teams is not actually a web conferencing tool. I would say that it is a mini LMS that allows us to invite all of our students, and then we can have all our students in the specific space, and then we can straight away start meeting with all the listed students in our space. So the same concept is done with WebEx Space. So usually, previously it is called WebEx Teams, but now it is called WebEx Space. So if you are a subscriber of WebEx account, if your institution subscribes WebEx account, then you will have this function of WebEx Space automatically, in which you can create the space, and then you can invite your students, and your teaching and learning session can occur asynchronously as well as synchronously. So you can put your activity and then give them instruction, and then they can straight away respond to that at their own time. So asynchronously, you can do that as well. Other than that, you can also have live session, and the recorded session will be there automatically. So this can also be available. Now, I want to talk about the add-ons. So I was telling you just now that try to make full use of all the existing tools available in the web conferencing tool. Let's say if Zoom has a breakout session, breakout rooms, make full use of the breakout rooms. And then now they have whiteboards, so make full use of that whiteboard rather than using external whiteboard. However, if you feel like you really need an additional tool to complement your web conferencing tools, you can always use add-ons. So Zoom, in their Zoom marketplace, they have add-ons. So you can install these add-ons. So these add-ons will be available in your Zoom account when you want to use it. So similar to WebEx meeting, so you can install this add-ons, and some of these add-ons requires you to sign up for another account. Some of these add-ons are comes free, and they are not commercial. Some of them is free because you subscribe to WebEx account. Some of the accounts needs you to subscribe to commercial account if you want to use that for your web conferencing tool. I think Zoom has this kind of policy. So you need to check, because you do not want to have an add-on that, you know, in which that says, you know, you cannot use this account if your students is exceeding certain number of students, or your participants in your web conferencing tools is certain number. So you have to check that before you want to use that in your account. Now, I personally like these. I have 5 actually. So, but I prefer these 4 tools. Now, I have Zonka Feed, I have CoScreen, Slido, Hoilu, and sometimes I use Miro. But Miro is quite tricky, because if you use Miro outside of WebEx, then you have to pay. If you use Miro as an add-on in your WebEx account, then it is free. So I only use Miro if I want to use WebEx. So if I want to use Miro as a standalone apps, so I cannot do that because I have to pay. Okay. And I cannot add people if I do not have a commercial account or subscription. So Zonka Feed is for me to create survey, polls, and quiz. I just need the quiz function because, for example, if I use Microsoft Teams, and then I use WebEx meeting, they have these polls and surveys as the default tool that I do not use any add-on. I do not need any add-on if I want to use if I want to have poll or survey. But I need the quiz function because I want to see if my students answer right or wrong, who are they? So Slido or the polls function in WebEx meeting do not have this kind of feature. So you have correct question and then you cannot know because it's just a poll. Like people can choose and you can know which answers, the frequency of answers that is highest, for example, that is poll. So, but we do not know, students cannot know which answer is right, which answer is wrong, and I cannot set which answer is right, which answer is wrong, because it is not quiz, it is just poll. So I use Zonka Feed if I want to use, if I want to have quizzes. Co-screen is when, because I teach programming, I teach computer programming to non-computer science students. So co-screen is where it is not, it is a screen sharing, but in a way, I can correct my students' work on their screen. So this is the power of co-screen. But of course, this is, you have to be aware of the, security issues, because I, for example, I have access to my students' account, to my students' computer, in which I can correct their codes. So, but however, for teaching and learning purposes, I always tell my students to install this co-screen, and I only use co-screen when I teach live. If I teach them asynchronously, I don't normally use co-screen. You can use co-screen outside of Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams. You can also use co-screen inside WebEx, inside Microsoft Teams, and inside Zoom. So you can have both. But I only use co-screen when I teach students live, because I want to show everyone. So what is it that went wrong? Or if I want to ask someone to correct the coding in front of the screen in which everybody can see how the coding is being corrected. So I use co-screen. Maybe this is not for everybody. And I use Hoilu for online whiteboard. WebEx has its own whiteboard. Microsoft Teams has its own whiteboard. Zoom has its own whiteboard. But sometimes I like to use Hoilu. It's just because it is there, but I don't really use that frequent. Because if I want students to discuss on their own breakout session room, then I ask them to use the Hoilu. Because if students use the whiteboard in breakout session, I think they do not have the whiteboard function, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why I have this Hoilu in place. So these are some of the add-ons that you can use. You can find these add-ons in Zoom, in Microsoft Teams, in WebEx meeting. I'm not sure if it is available in Google Meet. I'm not really a fan of Google Meet, so I always use these three tools. But since Google Meet, has these limitations of recording, then I don't use them anymore. So this is the Zonka Feed, in which I can add my questions. So this is the questions that I add during WebEx meeting or before WebEx meeting start. I can do this. It allows us to have different types of question. I can have radio buttons. I can have button choice. So I can use, carry out survey, poll, or quiz. So I always use the function quiz in Zonka Feed, but not survey and poll. And then this is the Hoilu. This is the Hoilu version. I screenshot this one just now. In Hoilu whiteboard, we can have sticky notes. We can have students writing or scribbling on the whiteboard so that everybody can see. So and they can use this respectively in their breakout session. So that is what I like compared to using the existing whiteboard in WebEx. So this is an example of Miro. So Miro is, I use Miro if I want to have a mind mapping session with my students, then I use Miro. So it is more or less like Hoilu, but Miro I think is more popular. But as I said just now, the drawbacks of Miro is that when you want to use Miro outside of WebEx or outside of Microsoft Teams and Zoom, you have to subscribe. So, but if we are using Miro in WebEx, for example, I do not have to pay. I can just invite person to use the board that I have prepared. So I also use Miro for my teaching and learning sessions sometimes. And finally, because I have a subscribed account in WebEx, I think this is not really a new feature, but I think most of us now carried out webinars in our teaching and learning. So in WebEx, for example, you can have webinar session in which you can schedule a webinar. I want to highlight this as compared to scheduling meeting like normal people do. Okay, because in webinar, for example, you can add the webinar materials first. You can add on your post-webinar survey and your post-webinar landing page. So you can prepare this beforehand. So this is what I like. And then you'll be able to see, the panelists will be on certain columns and the attendees will be in certain column. So this is what I like about scheduling a webinar in WebEx. If you're using WebEx and you are conducting a webinar, try to use this feature as well. I think this is a great feature. And a little bit of extra in WebEx meeting. You know that, if you open your camera and then you want to have a good sign, and then you can tick on this item, recognize hand gesture, and then you can have your thumbs up, and then this icon, this emoticon will be automatically on. So if you have, for example, clapping, then you will see in your screen there is this emoticon showing clapping emoticon. So this is just things that I wanted to share because I think it is interesting. So, and if you want to have a bad sign, so the WebEx will also show this emoticon. So you do not have to press on the emoticon to show your reaction. You can just have a gesture like this, and then they will recognize your hand gesture. I think that's all because it's a very quite a technical session. So I will open to question. I think I will be answering question more if we have question.
Okay, can I ask Prof. Nubia?
Yes, please.
Okay, very interesting. Really, I enjoyed your talk and very advanced application you are using. So, were you able to take any feedback from students on these applications?
The web conferencing tool, you mean?
Yeah, because what you showed, Zonka Feed, Co-Screen, Slido, Hoilu.
Yep.
So I'm personally not familiar with this. So so which one? So because whatever tools we are using in our IMU, I'm working in IMU. So we usually take a feedback, and then we assess what is the best for the students. So out of this, so were you able to take any feedback or any survey you did?
Okay.
And which semester do you teach? Just a quick thanks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your question. So what happened now is that everybody is teaching online, and everybody is teaching using the web conferencing tool. It's either Zoom, it's either Google Meet or WebEx. So if I stick to the only existing tool available in WebEx or Zoom, then it is no longer unique for my students. It is no longer exciting for my students. I think initially, before, if we in the year maybe to 2018 or 2017, if we start teaching live in such way, then it will be interesting for our students because, oh, this is new. I can listen to my lecturer. I can listen to my lecturer at my own convenience and space. So and then we can just use simple basic tools in the web conferencing tools. However, we are competing to be an engaging teacher with another subject, after this session, for example, after today's session, and then I have another session in which my teacher again will be using the same old WebEx or the same old Zoom. There's nothing new or nothing interesting about it. So I have to jazz up my presentation or the way I teach to be more engaging in such a way that I have to include all these apps. So all these existing apps in the WebEx or in the Microsoft Teams. So when I ask my students which of these tools that they prefer, among my programming students, they prefer the scroll screen tools, this one. But because I believe this is because that they are learning programming, so they can see straight away, and they can also help to correct their friends' coding in their friend's screen, on their friend's screen, because we can our friend is sharing their screen, and we can go to their screen and correct the program at their screen. So for my students, in my specific context of teaching programming language, co-screen is the most beneficial for them. I think it depends also, you have to also choose which tools or which apps, add-ons can work optimally for the content that you teach. So maybe co-screen is not so much important for someone teaching theoretical subjects, for example. But for my students, they really like co-screen because they can correct the program, the coding at their friend's screen. So they have a perception that they have control over their friend's screen. So they like that kind of things, and they think this is interesting for them to learn programming. So
which semester and which is what subject and which semester?
I teach second year students programming language. Yes.
Second year student. Oh, yeah. Right. Okay.
Second year students programming language. So they like co-screen very much, but I think it's because of the subject, that the nature of the subject that I teach.
Yes, correct. Yeah. That's the nature of the subject. Yes. That's very interesting. Thank you very much. Thanks, really. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question here. Is WebEx safer than Teams? I personally do not know how to answer this question because I personally do not know. But I think it depends also on the subscription that you have. If Microsoft Teams, as I understand it, my students do not really prefer to have classes on Microsoft Teams because they claim that it is a heavy application, and when they want to open up their computer, every time they want to switch on their computer, it takes a lot of time for students with very low spec computers to turn the Microsoft Teams on. In terms of safety, I would say that if your university is subscribed to Microsoft accounts, I would say that Teams would be safer. In fact, a lot of my colleagues, I have some friends in UK. Most universities in the UK, they prefer Microsoft Teams. In fact, recently, in the grants that we have with our UK counterparts, in the agreement of the research agreement, they say that our communication have to be in Microsoft Teams. I'm not sure, is it because that Microsoft Teams is safer, but they did specify that all of our live meetings and our communication has to be done in Microsoft Teams. So that is what I know, but I'm not sure, is that an indication that Microsoft Teams is safer than WebEx? That what I don't really know. Yes, Dr. Hasnain, your question?
Yeah, thanks, Doctor, for sharing and comparison of all different web conferencing tools. Do you have experience of using them on mobile device or tablets? And what would be the difference?
Using them or teaching with mobile devices?
Yeah, I mean using these platforms on mobile devices.
Oh, okay. I do not have experience teaching using mobile devices because, but using them as a participant, using these tools in mobile devices, I do have experience. But teaching with these tools in mobile devices, I do not have the experience. But my students did participate in my teaching and learning session using their mobile phones. And so far, they do not have any problem participating in my teaching and learning session if I were to use these add-ons in my WebEx or these add-ons in my Zoom or Microsoft Teams. They don't really have that problem. But maybe co-screen is a problem, I think, because if my students using mobile phone, then co-screen is for laptops only, for computer screens only. So I cannot use co-screen for students using mobile phones. That would be a challenge. But yeah, but when they learn programming, they hardly use co-screen. They hardly use mobile phones to learn to code. So they don't do that.
Yes, another question. What you showed your application, they are good for the medical science subjects, which are classroom-based subjects. But what about your experience with the clinical subjects, in which we need patients and clinics to better interaction? So,
what do you usually, when I try to search for devices or add-ons that I want to use, because there are so many add-ons available in the market, try to think what you want the students to do. Then only we try to search on the correct add-ons. So think
okay.
about what you want your students.
Yeah, I have a talk tomorrow at 11:30, so you can see, and then you can comment on that one.
Yep, sure.
We will show you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question, Dr. Hasnain?
Yeah. Because sometimes, the features we have on desktop may not be available on the mobile devices. So it's better to use them and compare the feature. Another question just pop up just now. What you foresee the future of these platforms? Do you want, are you seeing them like part of learning management system, or
Well, for one thing, Microsoft Teams can be has the plugin to be installed in Moodle, for example. Cisco also has the plugin for meetings in LMS in Moodle, for example. Even Zoom also have plugins. Google Meet also have plugins. I would say all these 4 web conferencing tools has plugins in platforms such as Moodle. Or I'm not sure if I can show you my university LMS. I think in the future, for example, Cisco WebEx, for example, WebEx initially in 2020, they have 2 separate platforms for web conferencing. One is WebEx Meeting, another one is WebEx Teams, as I show you just now. So if you talk about the future of these platforms expanding, I would say that they are now expanding because they know the potential of these spaces in teaching and learning. So this is what WebEx initially has. They have 2 different platforms. One is designed for the specific purpose of having a meeting. Another application, they call it as WebEx Teams, is designed specifically for teaching and learning, or for project monitoring, or for if you want to have groups interacting with each other, you have this space. We call that WebEx Teams. Now, I think starting 2021, what they did is that they combined these 2 applications, because not many people know about WebEx Teams. Now they combine WebEx Meeting and WebEx Teams together, and they renamed that as WebEx Spaces. So I would say that these providers, these tools, if you see here, this is an example of my account in WebEx. So I can have my WebEx space. I can have my classes here. I can also have my WebEx meeting if I want to have meeting and not necessarily related to classes, or I do not want to have spaces for specific someone, I can have a starter meeting. So they realize the needs for having these 2 in one place. But for example, in Microsoft Teams is specifically designed to have teams working together. So these teams working together can also be in the form of online class. We can have our students all together and do things together. So WebEx, initially, they don't have this idea. They have 2 separate applications, and now they combine it together. And all these web conferencing tools is also available as plugins in LMS. So you can find these 4 tools in, you can install these 4 tools in your LMS, in your learning management system. In Moodle, for example, they have plugins. So in a way that you can directly create a meeting in your e-learning or your learning management system. You do not have to have a separate application install but you can straight away do your meeting in your LMS or schedule a meeting in your LMS. And this trend, I think, will be there for a very long time, because I think we are moving there, and these tools are expanding, I would say. That would be my opinion at least.
Sure. Thanks for elaborating all in detail.
Yep. Do we have any other question?
No.
Oh, yes.
MC, do we have time? MC? If we have time, I have a small question like, how about your analytics, learning analytics? Which tool captures more and give us more data, about the activities, engagement, and all that?
Yeah, I would say Microsoft Teams has the learning analytics dashboard that I like the most compared to Cisco WebEx. For WebEx meeting, they capture how frequent your meetings are, like how many hours you spend on your meeting, which I think it is not necessary for me to know for meeting. And for WebEx Spaces, for the spaces, they also provide how many students participate, but I think the best learning analytics that you want to have based on your students' participation would be in Microsoft Teams. If you want to analyze students' participation, students' engagement, or if you want to give score, to your students based on your participation, then you should use Microsoft Teams. I would highly advise you to use Microsoft Teams because they have very nice learning analytics report for your teaching and learning session that you conducted. But in Cisco WebEx, there is also this tool there's this add-ons called Read. I think the name is Read. This Read tool will capture your participants' engagement in a meeting. So, but it is an add-on that you have to install. I will write that here. It is called read.ai. So this Read is an add-on that you have to install in your WebEx meeting, in your application, and then it will give you also the details of the engagement, participants' engagement, and they will be able to read, for example, whether your participants is interested in the content that you deliver or something like that. They read this eye movement and I think the features of your face. But I think you have to ask your students to turn on their camera in order to do that. Then only this Read application would be useful. But it is more or less for you to reflect on how you have been teaching or how have you been delivering your content to your audience. So Read is also an interesting tool, I think, if you want to capture that kind of analytics. But for who is engaging the most, who is doing what activity, I would say you use Microsoft Teams and not Cisco WebEx, I would say. Because WebEx will only capture the frequency of your meeting, the hours of your meeting, and things like that. Okay. Any other question? These add-ons are free so far. Hold on, I'm going to show you the add-ons. So these add-ons are free to use in the web conferencing tool. At least, for example, for Zonka Feed, co-screen is free if I want to use co-screen when I have WebEx meeting. Slido is free when I want to use Slido for WebEx meeting. So because sometimes we can also use, for example, co-screen outside of WebEx meeting. I don't have any WebEx meeting, but I want to use co-screen with my students. That one we have to pay. So some of these add-ons are free if we use them during our WebEx meeting. Some of them is not free when we want to use them outside of WebEx meeting. So like, for example, as I said just now, Miro is not free if you want to use Miro outside of your WebEx meeting. This is the one just now. So this Miro apps is not free if you want to use it outside of the WebEx meeting. So it also depends on the tools that you use. I think they have different types of agreement with WebEx. So these are the things that I know, that I frequently use, so I know. But as far as I know, this one, the one that I list here, is free for me to use when I use the web conferencing tool. So that is what I'm sure of. That I can have unlimited number of polls in Slido. I can have a lot of number of questions in Zonka Feed, something like that, when I use WebEx meeting. Okay. Any other questions? Or if I have no other questions, then I would say thank you very much for your attention and for your questions. So I'll pass the session again to the MC. Thank you very much, everyone. So I'll be sharing my slide in the chat immediately after this.